Clear.
Hello Mooney drivers and Mooney enthusiasts. This is a remake of a video I had done several months ago. I kind of wandered all over the place. It was pretty painful to watch, so I thought I'd do it over again and try to make this one a little more succinct. It doesn't mean I'm not going to wander a little bit, but I'll try to keep it a little briefer and a little more to the point. This is a 1968 Mooney M20C, and I believe that this procedure would probably apply to just about any four-banger Mooney from the A model. Probably not too many of those around. Those are the wooden ones. The B model was only made one year, about 1961 or 62. I'm a little rusty on my Mooney lineage. And then this again, Mooney M20C. The D was the fixed gear model. I think most of those have been converted. There weren't many of those around anyway. And then the FGJs, etc., so on and so forth. So I think anything with 4 cylinders that doesn't get into turbocharging and certainly not packing 6-cylinder motors with redundant systems, dual alternators, ice protection, that kind of stuff, this would probably work for. Don't quote me on that, but I'm thinking that would probably be the case. I can't take credit for this tip. I got this idea from a Mooney specific forum a few years ago, and it really works well. I was really frustrated by the fact that when I bought this airplane, I had a mechanic show me how to do an oil change, and his solution was just to pack the area around the oil filter with a whole bunch of rags and that sort of thing. It inevitably spilled oil all over the place. You ended up with a big mess on the back of the engine and down in the wheel well and on the hangar floor and everything else. So I also tried using Ziploc bags wrapped around the filter as you spin it off, etc., so on and so forth. None of them really worked. They still made a mess. Some of them worked better than others, but I spent more time cleaning up after the oil change than I did actually doing the oil change. So this tip is really slick. It works really well, and if you're careful, you won't spill a drop of oil. So I've got everything pretty well set up here for the oil change. I've got some hemostats, safety wire pliers, safety wire funnel, gloves. Not that any of this matters. This isn't going to be a how-to to how to change oil anyway, so I'm assuming that anybody who's watching this knows how to get to the point where you're taking the filter off. So, but there's a filter cutter, a cutter to cut the element out with, some DC4. I'm actually using some new filters. This is a Tempest. And there's a note on the side of this and also at the top of the case. I bought a whole case of these earlier this year. It says, install filter clean and dry. Do not use lubricant or DC4 compound on filter or engine mounting pads. So the filter that's on the airplane right now is the first one of these I've used without DC4. So we'll see how well it comes off today. Hopefully it's not seized. And of course some oil, and in case the feds are watching, service manual open to the appropriate page. So let me get the cheek panels and the cowl off, and we'll pick up there. Okay, so I've got the cheek panels and the cowl off. I've already also got the drain bucket and the drain line set up down here to the quick drain. So the crankcase is already drained. I've already pulled the safety wire off the filter as well. So I'm just ready to pull the filter off now, but that brings us to the star of the show. Introduce a length of PVC pipe. I forgot to measure this to find out what size it was. Okay, it's 1.5 inch pipe. It looked like 1.5, but I wasn't sure. So I think you could probably get away with 1.25 inch PVC pipe, but obviously this has been ripped in half. So, and then I've kind of rounded the edges and chamfered the edges on the entire length. You wouldn't need to do the whole length, just that portion that's going to go up into the engine compartment, but just so you don't abrade anything in there or catch on anything. I did during an oil change one time knock an ignition lead loose on one of the magnetos. I don't know if I did it with this or if it was wrenching with the box wrench. Things are pretty tight in here, and anybody who knows anything about Mooneys knows that they gain their speed and efficiency from having a very compact airframe. That means you have to pack a lot of stuff into a little space. So, but anyway, what's going to happen here is this pipe is just going to go right up there. Again, just be very careful, don't force anything. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's sliding up under the filter there. Have to do is set something up at this end to contain the oil. So I'll pull that filter off and put down in there. This is just a 1 inch ratcheting box end wrench. And again, it's tight. So it's just, I had that right the first time. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, dumbass. Okay, and again, this is the Tempest filter that tells you not to use any lubricant on the gasket. It certainly hasn't seized, but it didn't start to turn without a little jerking. Set that on the doghouse. And actually, I need to slide that tube just a little further up in there. Okay, now you can see that's up there just a little bit further. And there goes the oil. Don't know how visible that is on this, but and there you have it. Right into the container. Not down the back of the engine, the accessory pad, not down the firewall, not in the wheel well, and not all over the floor. This airplane just came out of annual. In fact, this is the last thing that needs to be done on it is oil change, and I need to change the air cleaner today too, or the air filter element. Anyway, just let that drain for a little while and then pull it off completely. So one other thing I usually do after I've gotten this tube installed and everything that I forgot to do today is to stuff a few more rags down in there on top of the, because as you start to unscrew that filter, it's going to back out towards the edge of the far side of that tube. And I've never spilled any oil, but I nonetheless still pack a few blue towels down there just in case there are a few drops. You don't, it's probably a little anal to worry about that, a drop or two, but nonetheless, since we're trying to keep it clean, that's what I tend to do. If you're new to aircraft ownership or a Mooney, one other thing that I found, this engine has a oil capacity of 8 quarts. 6 are required for flight minimum. By the certification standards, Lycoming certification standards, it's requires a ridiculously low amount of oil. So, and obviously you don't want to run below 6 quarts, but technically they could go even lower than that. But per the pilot's handbook and everything else, 6 is required minimum for flight. And I usually try to keep it right around 6 quarts. At the oil change, I'll add 7 quarts. That fills the filter and the crankcase with a little bit left over, but any more than that, and you're just going to blow it overboard. It's all going to end up on the belly of the airplane. So, food for thought. I used to, I do it in my cars and every other piece of equipment I own. I try to keep the oil topped off as close as possible. And it makes sense to do on an airplane because you can't just pull over and add a quart whenever you want to. But I can tell you, it's once you've learned the rate at which your engine consumes oil, try to keep it at the minimum, just so it's not going all over the place. So, okay, I think I beat that to death. So, once I pull that filter off, I'll put the other one on. I torque it. I'm one of those dopey guys that I'm kind of anal retentive, so it's I actually torque the thing. So, and last oil change, I didn't cut the filter apart and only had very few hours on it, so I didn't see the point. Since I didn't do it last, I still don't have a lot of hours on this oil, but since I didn't do it last time, I am going to cut this filter apart and check the element. Is that all I had? Yeah, I think that's all I had. Okay, so the filter is off and it's draining. I like to take that outside after I remove the element and look at the element in sunlight, just to see if there's anything shiny in there. It's sometimes hard to distinguish. That's something I don't care for. This is a new batch. I just bought a new case of these Tempest filters. They're cheaper than the Champions. And they've got some sort of, I think they've got a magnetic pickup or something in there. They differ slightly. They've got a feature on it that's different than the Champions. But one thing I noticed on the last case I bought is that the paint on these flakes really badly when you cut it. When you cut the filter open for inspection. And the problem is those little flecks of paint get on the element and you're not sure what you're looking at. So it's obviously bright white, so and it's obviously not metal, but it'd sure be nice if you didn't have the paint in there to try to differentiate from possible other contaminants. So normally I do oil analysis every time I change the oil on this. I change the oil on this airplane once every 25 hours or 3 months, whichever comes first. I haven't been too good about it the last year and a half to 2 years, just because I haven't been flying the airplane very much. So I've been trying to do it every 6 months, and I've failed at that even, so it's been gone a little longer. But nonetheless, I usually hit 25 hours right at about 3 months in a typical year of flying, so about 100 hours a year is what I typically do. I don't know why I brought that up, but it's probably a little frequent. But this particular airframe and engine has 1,600 hours total time on it. It had a little over 1,300 total time when I bought it, so I'm doing everything I can to try to keep that engine going as long as it's possible, because it's the one that came with the airplane in 1968. Never had an overhaul, so compressions are really good on it. It's still a real healthy engine, but and I'm doing everything I can to try to keep it that way. So again, I digress, but anyway, yeah, the filter is off, and I don't know if you can see that down in there, but there is the mounting plate, and still just an occasional drip into the tube. Just about ready to put the new filter on, and what I'll do is just leave that tube in place until the new filter is in place, and then I'll pull that out of there. So, and then comes my favorite part: safety wiring the new filter. I've kind of gotten it down to a science now, but man, was that a pain in the ass. I'd have to do it 2 or 3 different times. I actually read an article where a guy would actually put his filter on slightly tighter than it needed to be, safety wire it, and then back it off. I've never done that, but if you're going to cheat, it sounds like a good way to do it. So, okay, new filter installed, tube removed, and safety wires on that one. Always a pain in the posterior. All right, there's a dead oil filter. Predictably, it was perfectly clean, hardly even a glob of carbon in there. So the magnet on the filter is clean. I ran a magnet over the element, and it was clean. Again, nothing visible at all. So on the topic of the oil filter, it's probably also worth noting, since I mentioned it before, the paint on this one did not fleck like the last box of filters I got, so they may have corrected that problem. But yeah, it cut completely cleanly without a bunch of little paint chips all over everything. Just filling her up with oil. I'll get the cowl back on, pull it out of the hanger, and run it to check for leaks, and that's about it. So I'm not sure if you can see the bottom of the filter on this. But I just ran the airplane up, and the filter is not leaking. Everything else appears to be tight. I didn't hear any wrenches rattling around in there, or shop rags, or anything else, so I think I got everything out. Just need to button her up. All right, all buttoned up again. One thing I usually do is pull the dipstick after I fly. Let that vent for a while I'm putting the airplane away and everything, just to allow as much trapped moisture in the crankcase to escape. I don't know if it helps or not, but and we're in a pretty arid climate here, but again, it's all about making this engine go as long as I possibly can. So A couple more Mooney things. If you haven't read them already, a couple of good books on Mooneys. One is Those Remarkable Mooneys. I forget the author's name. I think he worked for Beechcraft for a while, and he does tend to get into a little bit of Beech Mooney comparison, but otherwise it's a very good book. A lot of history about the airplane and its manufacturing. Another book is the Al Mooney story. I'm not much into biographies that don't involve historical figures, but again, I don't know the author on that one, but it was really pretty interesting. So Al Mooney was a pretty remarkable fellow. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this or got some use out of it. No need to like or subscribe. That's not why I'm doing these videos. And frankly, I can't imagine why anybody would like them anyway, because they're boring as hell. But anyway, I hope you found this useful. Thanks and have a dandy day.